Hello and welcome to the Real Agents of Change. And we love to talk about how to fund nonprofits, how to bring big donations to the nonprofit world and our world that would come from appreciated assets of real estate at $600,000 a pop. But we're talking with Mary today. I was on her podcast last week, and she does such beautiful things for the nonprofit leadership world. I want to make sure everyone has a chance to have her expertise. So, Mary, share a little bit with our viewers about who you are, what you do, and let's just have a conversation and inform people.
Oh, sounds great. Thanks so much for the invitation to come chat with you again, Cami. It's always a delight. And I love what you're doing as well, because it is such an untapped resource. So I hope those out there who are in nonprofit will pay attention to that. I've been involved with nonprofits for over 40 years. So I've been around a long time, was an executive for 26 years. I've been a coach and consultant for 20 years, and I focus on leadership, particularly the partnership and collaboration between the executive director and the board. I believe that there's a ton of untapped potential in our boardrooms. I believe that boards are basically good, unlike a lot of the board bashing that goes on in the sector where people tend to blame boards for things. I see and hear and have for years that board members are well-intended people who are trying to do the best they can to advance a mission that they care about. And I am passionate about helping executives and boards work together effectively to advance those missions in whatever way, shape, or form the help they need takes, whether it's having challenges with board recruitment is something I hear about a lot. Currently, I'm working on a new program to help with board member engagement. 89% of executives in a little research study I did said that it was really important for them in the moment to increase the engagement of their board members.
I'm glad you bring that up, because the one question that I have about boards and being on a board myself with other board members that may not be as engaged, and speaking to so many nonprofits, what is the trick? How do you get the board to engage and actually do that which they signed up to do?
Well, that is a huge question, but I'm going to tell you one thing. And it actually, I wrote a book that addresses this, but the first really critical step is to find out why a board member isn't engaged. It's as Simon Sinek said it, start with why. And in my experience, that isn't happening. It's sort of common sense, but a lot of times we don't always. Common sense is not that common. I guess you may have heard that. And you just have to start with having the conversation with the individual. What is going on? What are they interested in? There are a lot of different behaviors. I also asked executive what kinds of behaviors show up that tell them that a board member isn't engaged. And there were, 7 or 8 different kinds of behaviors, either not showing up to meetings, not following through on commitments, being at meetings, but really being withdrawn and not participating. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that people are not engaged, and you have to just tease it out one person at a time. And once you know the reason, then you can begin to think about strategies to help that person get more engaged.
I'm thinking of Dr. Russell James and how he would say, use words that work. In other words, and in his Socratic fundraising, where he talks about asking questions and then giving answers to teach people as you're asking the question. I'm wondering, is it better to ask them And I know you don't mean to say, why are you not engaged? But
Oh, absolutely.
is it more like, why did you join the board? What
Yeah,
are you wanting to get out of the board? That sort of thing.
absolutely. And it depends on the circumstances. If the person's not showing up or not coming to meetings, then your approach might be to reach out and say, we really miss you. We value you. We need you. To approach this from a positive perspective versus, as you point out, not a blame or a, why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do? It's really amazing to me how the lack of one-on-one attention that happens in the boardroom. You can be on a board for a whole year, and maybe there's people there you never have on your team, technically, that you never have a one-on-one conversation with. What I know from my research, and my book delves into this, is that the three causes of all problems, not just board disengagement, but all problems with board members and boards, fall into three categories, three dimensions of the board: capacity, connection, which is the relationship dimension, and the culture of the board, which is about the assumptions, the practices that go on sort of unconsciously. And board member engagement really isn't any different. And, starting with why is important, because you want to find out where in those three dimensions does that person's why fit. Is it about the relationships? Maybe they aren't comfortable with someone. Is it because they just don't have the capacity to give the way they thought they would? Or is it the culture? They think maybe their job is just to oversee things, and doing more than that isn't part of being a board member. You just don't know until you sit down and have the conversation and invest in getting to know that person and seeing what you can do to help them connect more to the mission, or give them permission to move on. That can happen too.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the board that I sit on, and the woman who runs the board. Uh, she's such a beautiful human being. Like,
Oh,
you can't meet Connie Myers and not love her. And,
oh,
everybody on the board feels that way about her. Everybody that I know that has ever met her feels that way. And she did some videos, a minute, 2 minutes long, just to put on the website and to use in social media, asking each board member, what made you join the board? And, they all said basically, because of you, because we love you, because we respect you, because we honor you. And I told her, I said, when you ask that question, make sure you preface it with, that's sweet, thank you, but let's leave that out. Like, is it the mission that we're here to engage people in? Is it, that you see a need for this in your community and they share a story of that? Sometimes, let's face it, sometimes people are on boards just because it feeds their ego and they want to tell people that they sit on a board. And of course, nobody's ever going to say that, but,
right.
but that's okay. If
It
that's
is okay.
as long as you know that, though, then when you're having that Q&A and, hey, we haven't seen you in a while, that's a good time to stroke their ego. Your input would be really helpful, and we sure would love to have you show up in the videos that we're putting out to the world, because that person wants to be seen as a board member.
Right. It's okay to get some. In fact, it's really imperative, and that's something these kinds of conversations can explore, is it's okay for board members to get something out of it. And they shouldn't feel like they're sacrificing themselves, just like executives shouldn't feel that way. It's okay to get something out of your board service. Now, you don't want your ego to, trump the mission, and that you're there because somehow you need something and you're needy and you're not doing anything to contribute to the mission or be a part of the effective board team. That's a different thing. But you know what? I've been involved with boards, and I've been on boards for almost 20 years myself. And I have seen that once, one person in the hundreds and hundreds of board members I have seen and interacted with over my career. It just is not something that's common, and a lot of people act as if it was, but it isn't.
Can you share a story? I think stories are really important. A story of a board, an executive who had a board maybe that wasn't engaged, and maybe walk us through like where they started, what you did to help, and where they were when you were at the end of your or during your time with them.
Okay, I'll have to think about this, but yes, there was this executive was a founder and very much wanting to be in control and leading. And when she first recruited her board, it was people that she knew. You know, this is so typical when you start the nonprofit. But then they came on as her friend buddies, but she wasn't really utilizing the power of the board. She wasn't engaging the board in strategic issues. And then later on, as she wanted to grow the organization, which is when she got me involved, she was saying, I can't get my board members to do anything. And I said, well, what kind of conversations have you had? When they came on the board, what was your agreement about what it meant to be a board member? And we slowly worked together to, one, educate the board about what that job is, allow people to choose to do something different or get off the board or get on a committee and get off the board. But slowly over time, she was able to recognize that she needed to be a partner and that she needed to bring people on who wanted to be active and involved and not feel threatened by them or feel that she was going to have the mission go off track. And that ended up very well for her because she was able to change how she was showing up and work with the board members to honor their service, but help recruit, frankly, a new board with a new perception of what that job was. So I hope it's helpful.
Let's face it, just about anything we do in life, you go through phases, and, just like the first relationship you have, you kind of stumble a little bit, but then, some of us, a couple of relationships later, we get a little bit better at it. And I can see how when you first have, hey, this is my best friend, and this is my sister, and this is my partner from another business, and they're all behind me. But then a couple of years later, it's people that are actually seasoned board members and people that are there for the mission. That makes sense. Now, I know that you have some freebies, some giveaways, some great information on your website. Feel free to share what people can expect when they go to your website and see your packages, your programs.
Okay, well, to go to my website, you go to hilandconsulting.org, O-R-G, and Hiland is spelled Hiland. There's no GH in there. So hilandconsulting.org. You go there, and the main freebie there is 6 steps you must know to unleash the potential of your board. And that's a downloadable item. All my podcast episodes, 220 plus, are posted on my website. So you can go and listen to Cami, you can listen to anyone and scroll through and find that. And I also have a description of the executive coaching that I do, what I walk clients through in terms of the client journey, clarifying the issue, prioritizing what they want to work on, strategizing around what to do about it. And then I really lately am particularly focusing on helping executives lead with their boards, helping executives cultivate an effective board. I'm not as much going in and doing that directly myself with their boards, but helping empower executives and help them understand that they can be a catalyst for board development and for board change. They don't have to rely on someone like me to do that.
So you'll do one-on-one coaching with the executive director directly, and then also with the group, maybe a one-off,
I have a
maybe a
group
6-week.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 online courses that are really great resources. Frankly, one's board orientation success, and that's for the executive and the board. When you need to train someone what it means to be a board member, which most board members don't get this training, then you can direct them to the course. It's available if you get it forever to you, to any board members you have, all your new board members. It's a great message about how to be an effective board member. The other course I have is Board Recruitment Success. I developed a recruitment system that really works to help you have a pipeline of ideal board members. And I've tested this in real life with over 10 nonprofits. I am not a search firm for board members, but this is about teaching you what kind of system you can put in place for your nonprofit that is a repeatable, proven system so you can find the board members you need and want when you want them. So that's another online course that I have them that way because I want them to be available so you aren't dependent on bringing me in the room to deliver that training. So
what's one little tip or trick to recruiting? Just one, not all of them, just a little taste.
Don't sell. One of the big mistakes nonprofits make in recruiting is they get in front of a prospect and they spend the whole time selling that person on their nonprofit. Your job is to listen. Your job is to figure out, is that person a match for your strategic criteria for new board members? You want to get to know them. And if you're doing all the talking to start, they're going to be influenced by what you're saying in terms of what they say back, unconsciously sometimes. But you've got to figure out if this person's a good match. And too often nonprofits approach recruiting desperately, like we got to get somebody. And that's the wrong way to go about it. You want to act as if you want a high bar for your recruiting.
And that's a great tip too, because the thing that came to my mind is a saying I heard many years ago: a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Meaning, when you sit there and tell about the nonprofit, it's almost like you're convincing them to be on the board. And then, you're always having to convince them and remind them of how great your nonprofit is and why they need to come to meetings.
And you wonder why they're not engaged because you didn't match what they really want to do and know and contribute because you weren't listening well enough.
Well, as they say, the good Lord gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And it's best to use them in that proportion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, Mary, make sure that you send over to us any links that you would like for our viewers to find you out. We'll put them in the description of the YouTube of this video. And it's always a pleasure to bring people on that can help with the tedious responsibility of behind the scenes. Everybody sees the galas and the fundraisers and, buying a raffle ticket, going to a golf tournament. But they don't know the hours and days and weeks and months of planning in the boardroom, as I say, in the boring boardroom. But with your help, it doesn't have to be boring. So thank you for being here. Is there any last thing you'd like to share?
No, just want to appreciate you and appreciate all your listeners for what they're doing in their roles in nonprofits, whatever that is, because you're making a difference out there. And take care of yourself. If you take care of yourself, you'll be able to do a better job. Sacrificing yourself is not serving anyone. So please think about, how are you taking care of yourself?
Oh, well, that's a beautiful way to end the show. So, well, thank you for being here, Mary. Friends, if you have a nonprofit, I'm sure you need a little bit of help with that board. No matter how long you've been around, there's always a little something to learn. I always think that no matter who I'm listening to or what book I read or what seminar I go to, there's always a pearl of wisdom there. So go check out Mary's website, and of course, reach out to the Real Agents of Change, especially if you want to learn about charitable gifting of real estate, which can 6 times the donations for your nonprofit. Thank you, Mary. See you the next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.